Hi y'all, welcome back to this month's four-way collaboration video, the 18th in our series with Richard Raffin, Tomislav Tomasech, and Sam Angelo. Today, this project was identified, proposed by Richard Raffin, something with a wheel. So I'm turning this little wheelie bug pull toy for a toddler. I wish I could say this was my idea, but I got it from Richard Raffin's book that I've had for some time, turning toys, because I've turned one of these for my granddaughter a number of years ago. I had to check with Richard, make sure he wasn't doing the same project, but he's got something different. All right, what kind of wood do we need for this project? Well, it ought to be dried wood, probably ought to be hardwood, but you know, I think most any wood you have on hand will probably work. Let's look at the particulars. This is one I made for my granddaughter some years ago. So for the body you need something about 2.5 inches square and about 4 inches long. I'm using this piece of spalted wood. For the tail, I'm using contrasting wood. You need something about 6 inches long, 2 inches wide to turn these beads. I'm using walnut because I have it on hand and I wanted some contrasting wood. You might throw in some other small block to just turn a different colored, lighter colored bead. So I'm going to throw in that piece of poplar maybe. For the wheels, I want to make the wheels a little larger than this, so I'm going to use a 3-inch square, about 2¼ inches long to make 2 wheels, because I want to have some big wheels. In this case, this is a dried piece of holly. So my first challenge is to drill a through hole big enough for the cord to go through, in my case about 3/16 of an inch. My problem is my drill bit's not long enough to go all the way through, so let's see how I handle that. And if you've got a better idea, leave in the comments below. So now I've got a starter hole. Closest drill bit that I've got as long as 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to see if I can't do a through hole with this. And then I can come in from the other side. Clear tip. Okay. So now I've got a through hole. It may not be centered, but it's okay. Now I'll go back to the drill press and drill through this end. I may have forgotten to mention we also need a dowel for the axle. Now in this case this dowel is about 5/16 of an inch thick, so I want a little larger through hole, so I check that with my template till I find the right size, and it's 21/64. Now the trick is you want to make sure that this doesn't interfere with the cord, so draw a line through here down the side and then measure, align your tool bit like this on that, and then that'll be where your through hole is going to be. That'll clear it. So let's go over to the drill press and take care of that. In terms of design consideration, I want the front edge of the wheel behind the nose a little bit, so maybe a 1/2 inch. So these are going to be 3 inches, so half of that radius 1.5. So I want to come back 2 inches off of that block before I drill the hole for the axle. I like to use a fence to secure this. It's a pretty simple turning project, so I think the only 3 tools you're going to need is a spindle roughing gouge, spindle gouge, 3/8, or like in this case, or maybe a 1/2 inch, and some sort of parting tool. Maybe a skew if you like using a skew. So we put the body blank between centers, and then we're just going to turn it basically into a cylinder. Always revolve your work, make sure it's not going to rub on anything. Get your lathe bed parallel. Orient your tool rest parallel. Get your tool rest at a height so you can cut about center, maybe a little bit higher when you first start roughing. And here we go. That's a little faster than I want. I'm going to rough this at a little under 2,000. Whoa. Lock that down. Rough to a cylinder. bring in the tool rest a little closer, leave maybe a 1/4 inch gap, and then I'm going to go from the thickest part here to bring it down just a little bit here. Not sure how far. I don't think I'll just do it by eye. Maybe it's going to be 2 1/4 or so inches. Maybe this might be 1 3/4. One consideration is this should be approximately the size of the largest bead you're going to use, which in my case is no more than 2 inches. Or start with a 2 inch block. And then we're going to smooth this off. Let's round this over with a spindle gouge. And we're going to take a final cut here. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of chamfer here on the end. Just a bit of a chamfer right here, about 45 degrees. There we go. Now I'm going to round over the head, kind of oval shape. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle until it cuts. Over a little bit. And I think that looks fine. Now we'll just sand this up. I'm going to do the wheels next, and I'm just going to mark the centers by going from corner to corner on each side. We'll mark that with an awl. I've already done the other side. No reason to do wheels next. That's the option I've chosen. So let's go ahead and put this on the lathe. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle till it cuts. You can certainly do this with 2 wafers of wood and turn them separately, but I find it easier to do them both at the same time. Mark the center, put a part down it, then you can get them rounded over and looking very similar at the same time. I lost a little footage here, but basically I drew a line down the middle. I made a part for to separate the 2 wheels, came down a little bit. Marked the center of each wheel so when I rounded it over, I could get an appearance, a curve of each side that kind of matched. And then you can just kind of visually check them. Then we're going to sand it off before we part it off. And I faced this, scrape this back a little bit because it was pretty rough cut on the bandsaw. Just round it over. Now these are about as simple wheels as you can get, and this project is about something with a wheel. I've got some bonus footage at the end on how to do a different kind of wheel for like a tractor or a truck or something with treads on it using a spiraling and texturing tool, so you might check that out. I'll take a thin parting tool and part down on both sides. I'm going to do the remainder with a thin flush cut saw. It might be easier to do this off the lathe. Okay. There's the wheels. You need a little bit of sanding. Now, For me, the easiest way to sand something like this where you couldn't get into an area to sand is put a mandrel on your lathe where you adjust the variable speed. I'm using a collet chuck, but you could use a drill chuck. If you do use a drill chuck, I would suggest you really need to use a drawbar to pull it in tight into the Morse taper so it won't rattle loose and be a problem. I suspect I'm not the only one that'll somehow prick themselves or accidentally get a tiny little cut in their shop and don't remember when it happened or how it happened. But I urge you to keep some ointment handy so you can at least keep it from getting infected and promote healing. I find it easiest to drill the holes in the wheels on a drill press because I can control the height very easily and I can secure it, but you can always use an electric hand drill. Just be cautious. We're going to drill it in about a half an inch, since the wheels are about an inch in diameter, and I'm going to have a stopped hole. And I've measured the hole necessary for a fairly tight friction fit with this drill bit template. Before I cut off the axle, I stick as far as it's going to go into one hole. Then I'm going to allow for just a little bit of slop in here, so you don't get any friction before you cut it off. And you can, if it's too long, you can always sand it down. But if it's too short, you got a problem. And I'll just cut that off with a flush cut saw. And there we go. Now I got to drill this other hole. Okay, I'm turning this from about a 2-inch piece of walnut. I'm going to rough it between centers, and then I'm going to put a chuck tenon on it. Although that's not really necessary, I think it's a little easier to shape the beads and drill the holes if it's in a chuck, and then I can work my way back. So let's get it round. Anchor the tool, ride the bevel, lift the handle till it cuts. Anytime I'm turning something about 2 inches, I'm very cautious about getting it completely round before I put the tenon on it. I can deal with some flat edges on the tenon. In this case, I'm going to put the tenon on with a parting tool, 3/16 of an inch. This tool happens to be from Record Power. That's a good fit. I'm going to go ahead and start drilling a hole through here. Makes it a little easier when I start parting them off. The drill bit, I can only go in 2.5 inches, so after I make a few beads and part them off, I'll have to drill another hole. But meanwhile, this will work just fine. So I've got this 3/16 inch drill bit. Put my hand on it. Don't let it go too far before you clear chips. That off. And we're going to go ahead and use a 60-degree cone center, the one that came with my lathe, and that hole will make it really easy to keep these beads centered. Now the first bead I want to make, I want it approximately the size of this, so I've got to take this down some. I don't want to get too fussy with it, but I know it's at least looks like maybe 3/8 of an inch too thick, so let's just take it down some. So I want the beads just a bit over 5/8 of an inch, about 17 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that bead. I could just eyeball it, but what the heck. And now let's go ahead and take a parting cut. I'm going to use an 1/8 inch parting tool for this. Give myself a little room to get down there to sand, but not so large that I'm going to waste wood. I'm going to go ahead and take a 3/8 inch spindle gouge and just turn a bead. I find when I teach people turning beads and coves, their biggest problem is they tend to make wedges because they don't want to keep bringing the handle around, riding that bevel. So they wind up getting a wedge. So if you're getting wedge-shaped beads, it's just pushing on one plane instead of bringing it all the way around. And let's get a little clearance on this side. This is a good project. So if the beads aren't perfect, it's not going to make any difference. Not going to affect the operation of this toy. Whoa! Lost the bevel support contact. So let's get rid of that little bit of texture that I created here. And I think I've done it. Okay. Can't talk and chew gum at the same time. There's the bead. We'll go ahead and sand that off a little bit, sand it off. I'm going to take it, back this off and get rid of that little bit of, just true it up a little bit. Taking light cuts because I'm extended off pretty good ways with this chuck. I'll go ahead and sand it while I've got it in this position. I could put almost any kind of finish on here, but I'm going to use some lacquer sanding sealer just because it dries fast and it'll give a nice satin sheen to it. Now I'm going to use the thin parting tool to part this off. Support tailstock. I thought I could catch it. So there's the first bead. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring up tailstock again. I figure I can get about 4 beads out of here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size of this just a little bit. Then round it over. Line that bevel all the way around. Now let's part off the next bead. Speed up a little bit. Always hold on to the drill chuck when you're backing out. I'll go ahead and drill them in reverse size, starting with the smallest one on the end. So starting with that smallest bead, it's going to be about 7/8 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a smaller tool rest, make it a little easier to get in there. And we're just going to take that down. Let's use a relative reference. Let's see what size that cone is. That cone's over an inch, so I got to get down below that cone. I've got a little mark here. Looks like I might have touched this cone with a tool at one time, so that's a pretty good reference. I measured that. So let's go ahead and just use a spindle gouge and turn around a ball here on the end, about 7/8 of an inch in diameter. cut's got to be the bevel perpendicular to the wood with a handle parallel, the tool parallel with the floor to minimize the chance of it skating on you. Let's get an idea of the size, see if I need to make it a little smaller. And that's over an inch. I do need to make it smaller, so I will do that. Then bring that handle around. And you widen that bevel. It's still a little bit big. I'll go ahead and clean up that end. Whoa! Well, I'll tell you what, getting sloppy here in my old age. Drop tool rest just a little bit. It's alright. This was a bead. I was taking this bead down anyways, doesn't matter. Okay. And that's pretty close to where I want it to be. Alright, we'll go ahead and sand that up, finish it, part it off. Alright, got that sanded and finished, now we part it off. There we go. So I got a little piece of scrap poplar that came out of a piece of furniture. It's already got a hole drilled in it. And it's square, it'll just fit in my 40mm jaws. Mount it in here with the corners between the jaws. Before I get completely tight, I'll go ahead and bring up the cone center. Make sure it's perpendicular before I tighten it up. And it's going to be about an inch, so all I got to do really is just pretty much make that round. I'll go ahead and use my spindle gouge. Kind of make a half a cove on this end. It's kind of rounded section. And downhill. And we'll go ahead and part this off. We'll hit that 3/8 inch hole here. There we go. Uh-oh. That one wasn't drilled all the way through, but that's okay. I'll use a hand drill. Finish drilling that hole. Okay, what kid doesn't like a colorful toy? I tried a couple of dyes. I tried yellow and I tried red, and I thought, okay, let's go for red. So that's what we're going to do. I'm using Chromacraft wood dye. It's got 10% shellac in it. I've had real good success with this stuff in the past, so put a liberal coat on it. Always, always, did I say always wear gloves. Okay, time to assemble. Get your cord. You need about 4 foot. Tie a knot in the and give yourself a couple of inches at the end that can kind of unravel, similar to this one.
And then we're going to start stringing it together with the various 7 or so beads that we've got. I'm going to take the smallest bead. That's going to be the last one. And when you have any blowout from drilling, I find a plumber's reamer really handy for just kind of cleaning up the end. So I'm going to take care of all of that. Anytime I have holes that need cleaning up or fittings to come together, this plumber's reamer has really been handy. If you get one that's 7/8, not 5/8, not a ½ inch. It'll cost you a little bit more, but the 5/8 is going to be handier. I know that this ends, so it makes it a little easier to thread. So that'll be the last bead. So I'm going to finish it out. The end finish going to be. Okay, so there's that one. I'm going to use this a lot shaper. One of the smaller end. The larger end to the front. And then the next bead will be this one. And then the next one will be this one. And I'll see one more. Ah, see one. One is this one here. And then we got the small one. And the next one. And then it looks like this one will be next. And then these two. And then next. This is next one. And then time for the eyes. In the past, I've used a little brad point bit that leave a little hole indentation. Here's 3 experiments, and I colored the inside with a little black Super Sharpie. But I've got a bunch of map tacks left over from previous eye projects, so I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to use a 5/16 inch brad point bit to drill it down a little bit, and then drill a smaller hole to put embed a map pen.
Now for that bonus footage I promised on turning truck tires with a spiraling tool.
On June 13th, Bill showed us his beautiful wooden toys. I just want to show you a little different technique for quickly coming up with some textured tires. Turn a cylinder, get it to final surface sanding, and then we're going to use the largest cutter that Sorby has with their spiraling system. Get some glasses on here. And we use a speed of, no more than about, say, 750 at max. With a Sorby spiraling system, it's got a saddle that you can replicate the angle. So I'm going to come in here, and we're just going to come in halfway. Come up to the bottom. And I'm going to mark that with a pencil. I think I can almost see that. Then we're going to turn this in the other direction to the same setting, which is a 2 in my particular case. Okay, now I'm going to come in from the other direction and stop right there at that middle line and see if I can do that. Throwing pencil lines helps, so I just want to show you the technique. And I just kind of pivot it and pivot to the center. That will should give us a herringbone pattern. And we can go ahead and adjust the tool rest, round over the edges, of course, with a spindle gouge. Let's speed up a little bit. And then I'll probably mark where that outside that tire is so I can see it. Now we come into the other direction. And basically you're done. That's how you texture it. You know how you do this in theory. I think you take a dowel, you drill a hole through it, so you could actually turn it on center to get it even, and then texture a number of wheels at one time, and then just come in there with a parting tool, part them down, then take it off to a bandsaw and just start slicing them off.
Be sure to click on the links and watch the projects with on their interpretation of a project with a wheel by Richard Raffin, Tomislav Tomasec, and Sam Angelo. I'm sure their project's going to be different from this. If you want to catch all our videos, I've got a full playlist of all the 4-way collaboration videos for the past 18 months. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, you hear?